بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Last session, we spoke about social hierarchy. And the idea about social hierarchy is that societies tend to value certain characteristics and certain lifestyles. And that tends a lot to do with the ideology, the general ideology society is following and society has been built on. And we need to accept that there will always be some sort of social hierarchy in order. But it's equally important to understand what determines that hierarchy. And today I want to kind of branch out on this topic and focus on our current context, the American context, to try and understand some of the elements dictating and influencing the social hierarchy we are witnessing here in America. And I always try and make it from a spiritual lens, something that we can use to better understand our own spirituality, our own relationships with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and some of the challenges that the current social hierarchy in America poses to our ability to be good and better Muslims. And today what I want to focus on is perhaps one of the most, if not the most, revered sector of American society, the most respected, the most influential, the most followed and emulated sector and group of people in American society, and they are the celebrities. Celebrities here, I mean movie stars, musicians, maybe nowadays, I guess, YouTubers and social media stars and whatnot. These individuals have massive followings. Some people with, over 10 million, maybe even 20 million followers. I mean, that's absolutely enormous. Can you imagine, these individuals, as soon as they go live, they have hundreds of thousands of people watching them instantly, telling them how awesome they are, how much they love them, and whatnot. So these celebrities are perhaps the highest in the social hierarchy of American society. Now, why celebrities? And just to kind of drive this point a little bit, to make it a more interesting discussion, celebrities, let's say movie stars, actors, back in the day, I'm talking about way before, thousands of years or hundreds of years, centuries before Christianity even came to the scene. In Rome, what's modern day Europe, acting occurred. There was play, there was theater and whatnot. But something interesting was that the female stars, the actresses, were always prostitutes. In other words, every actress in this time was also a prostitute. And therefore, although they had some place in society, they also had this negative characteristic that society frowned upon. Right? Now, in our times today, celebrities have ascended even beyond this, that not only are they revered in society, they are idolized in society. Now, I'm not saying that the actresses today are all prostitutes. That's not what I'm trying to say. All I'm trying to show is that this notion of celebrities who gain their fame through theater and movie has drastically changed. Their persona has drastically changed over time. And we need to understand what caused that change. Why are celebrities idolized today, whereas back in the day, movie stars were there, they had some fame, but they weren't idolized? And this has to go back to the ideologies which American society is built on, which America in of itself as a project was built upon. And that includes capitalism, materialism, and individualism. Now, if social hierarchies are constructed based on what society values, then what we can quickly assume is that those who have such high amounts of fame are a culmination of the values of society, of the lifestyle of society. Since capitalism is about profits and making money, since materialism is about the material, what you own, what you possess, right, what you're able to enjoy, your desires, and individualism is about glorifying the self, well, who more culminates that than the celebrities? Who has more wealth than the celebrities? Of course, some business people do, but generally speaking, celebrities are always wealthy. They are multi-millionaires. I mean, some of these A-tier celebrities will make $80 million off a single movie, which takes 3 months or so to produce. I mean, $80 million in 3 months. I mean, that's absolutely fantastic. So they have the wealth, and therefore they embody the values of capitalism. And with that wealth, they buy lavish and huge homes, mansions that overlooks the ocean in Malibu and whatnot, and Beverly Hills and other places. They go on extremely expensive vacations. They post all of this on social media. They buy very expensive clothes. They drive very expensive cars. And therefore, they embody the epitome of materialism and individualism likewise. The world tries to be like them, and they are the ones who shape society. They're called influentials. It means they influence other people. They even influence their opinions, their lifestyles. People try, they go to the salon and they do their hair like this celebrity or that celebrity. And the stylist knows exactly what he or she is talking about and is quickly able to do it for them. They try and emulate their lifestyles. Why? Their persona, their self has reached a level in the eyes of society where they are ideal and thus they are idolized. So this is why perhaps celebrities in America are revered so much. Now, alhamdulillah, as I mentioned last session, for the Muslim American community, our quote unquote celebrities tend to be the religious leaders. And that is something healthy. It is showing us that the Muslim community, what they value most is Islam. And therefore, those who the community perceives as being most culminating of this value, they put them on a pedestal and they are celebrated. So this is something healthy. However, we are not immune, we are not invulnerable to kind of this other side of American society, the glorification, the idolizing of individuals and celebrities. So what you find in the Muslim American community, that you have this healthy aspect of our celebrities, why people become celebrities in our community, but also these negative aspects kind of trickle in, where this imam or this religious scholar is more than just a teacher of Islam. They become a type of celebrity, where they are followed and they are revered for their person, as if their person is what dictates what Islam is, instead of Islam dictating what that person is. People begin to judge Islam based on who this person is, rather judge that person by what Islam tells us is good and bad. So we have this happening. So let's very briefly, for the remaining time, to kind of understand some of the harms behind celebrity culture. And just as a caveat, this session isn't meant to try and push back against the celebritism that we find in our community. As I mentioned before, social hierarchies are natural, and therefore it's not about destroying them or making sure society has no hierarchy. I mean, that's unnatural. It's unnatural and perhaps even destructive, but rather changing the terms that dictate the social hierarchy, changing and making sure that the values that our social hierarchy are built on are healthy values and not problematic ones. So one of the greatest harms of a celebrity culture, is that the individual begins to perceive his or her life from this lens. In other words, when we look at Hollywood and movies, what is a movie really? When you go behind the scenes, what is a movie? You have an individual acting a certain way that is not representative of who that individual really is, and there's a camera centered around that individual. And what we find happening is that our young youth, their mindset actually is built around this, where their mind, what's going on in their thoughts is that they're trying to imagine their lives exactly like how this celebrity picture is. I am playing a role in my mind that isn't necessarily reflective of who I really am, but rather it's who I want to be. And Furthermore, they're looking at themselves from kind of a third person lens, where there's a camera centered on this individual, and all the other elements of their thoughts are kind of gravitating towards that individual. And the individual will kind of make certain scenarios in their mind, certain scenes. They got into an argument with their friend and it was dramatic, and what people said and what people did and whatnot. This is going on in their thoughts, right? Now, that in of itself is not too much of a concern. It goes away with maturity. However, the harm that can potentially rise from this is the centering of the individual, where the person's thoughts are centered around himself or herself rather than a greater image. And therefore, what the person begins to determine as good or bad becomes the norm and the standard that needs to be adhered to by all those around the individual. The person begins to view life the way he or she wants it to be, rather than the way it really is. And therefore, critique becomes about, this isn't what life should be based on my perspective. And unfortunately, you find this in the younger Muslim generation here in America. They begin to dictate terms of Islam, what religious scholars should be doing, what Muslim Islamic institutions should be doing, based on what they think life should be, based on what they think based on how they think the world should be from their own personal perspective, not on what's right and what's wrong, not built on evidences and proofs, not built on sophisticated arguments and intelligence and knowledge. Rather, this is how I perceive the world should be, and therefore I am going to enforce it and superimpose it upon everyone. And anyone who does not fall in line with this, with my perspective, needs to be canceled. And this is very, very dangerous, because these individuals with this mindset, they begin to be the authority over the Quran. The Quran should be saying this, not this. The Quran needs to say this and not this. The Quran needs to cater to my own personal needs. And I'm the one who needs to influence the Quran instead of the exact opposite. And this is very, 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 from an Iman perspective, very problematic. Because it was Iblis who told Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you were wrong, this is how it should have been. You are the one who caused me to go astray, and I was the right one. So this is a satanic type mentality, not to call these individuals Satan, or not to even compare them with Satan, but rather to kind of understand and acknowledge the mindset for what it really is, and the potential harms it can have on the individual's Iman, on their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the celebrity culture creates a certain mindset in the youth especially, and even sometimes when people continue to grow into their 20s and their 30s and even their 40s, that is very, very problematic when it comes to our relationship with Allah. Celebrity culture is about the superiority of that individual, that individual culminates these ideologies that center the individual, make the individual the authority instead of Allah. It makes the individual who's right instead of the evidences and the knowledge, or Allah and His Messenger. And this is something that we need to address and we need to recognize. And when we look at celebrity culture, subhanAllah, there are so many problems that we really don't have the time to go over. But another thing that celebrity culture does is that it is morally void. It is morally void. Because when you look at capitalism, it's about profit. It's not about morality. When economists study the economy, they're not considering morality when it comes to supply and demand, when it comes to deficit theories and profit, when it comes to the system of wealth and what dictates it. They're not considering morality. When they develop their philosophies, when they present their ideas, whether to government or to academic institutions, they're not saying what is the impact of this system on the lower class. They're not asking what is the impact of this system on our morality, on our behavior. How does it affect our family structure? our societal structure. They don't care. It's not part of the study. It's only about the profit, capital. How do we determine capital? And how do we use capital to make more money? That's capitalism in a nutshell. I'm being very oversimplistic here. So since capitalism is morally void, likewise, materialism is morally void. Material is about satisfying one's desires and gratifying the self. And in our times today, it is morally void. And so what you find are the most lewd and immoral people who spread immorality, who spread lewdness, are the celebrities. The ideologies that they present. Don't think that these movies are void of ideology. They're just showing you a story, and that's it. There are morals and lessons they are trying to instruct the audience to accept, trying to instruct the audience to live by. You know, I've mentioned this before, and that when you look at movies that is focused around intergalactic kind of travel, space, a universe out there, you know, look at the way they portray it. It's chaotic. When movies talk about the future, it's chaotic. Why is that? Because this is developed on a perception that God doesn't exist, or God exists but he could care less about human society. So you find this chaos that is perceived to be happening in the future. It's going to happen in the future. So they are instructing the audience that don't depend on a God. God isn't going to do anything from us, and here's the kind of what's going to happen in the future. So they're instructing the audience. So materialism is morally void. And likewise, individualism. It's about the individual. So if the individual wants something, then anyone who goes against it has become an enemy. The parents, and parents, you understand this when you raise your children, especially when they hit teenage years. You're advising them. You need to study. It's important to get a degree. Your life will be a lot easier if you have a good degree. Oh, you are making my life miserable. You're always in my way. You're always, preventing me from having fun, being cool and whatnot. Where's that mindset coming from? Individualism. I want this. My parents are making it harder for me to achieve this. Therefore, my parents are my enemies. And this is such a huge problem. So individualism is also morally void. It's not about morality. It's not about embodying virtuous characteristics and behaviors, but rather it's how can the individual feel better about him or herself? How can the individual satisfy and gratify their wants? So since celebritism culminates these three elements of our society, of the ideologies dictating our society, right? They are morally void. And thus Hollywood is really the source where all immorality and lewdness and anti-religious behavior springs from. Every movie now in Hollywood, almost every movie now in Hollywood, has to have a LGBT character. Why is that? Are there really that much LGBT wandering around this world? I know it's a huge problem, but what percent of LGBT compose this society? Is it 1% or even less? Yeah, in movies, it seems a lot larger than 1%. Subhanallah. When you look at, for example, the 70s, I remember that Three's Company that was played in the 70s. It was extremely controversial. Why? Because a man was living with two women and they weren't married. There was no relationship with them. That was super controversial. But you find that society eventually accepts it and they live by it. Now, in our times today, a man and a woman who are unrelated, they're not mahram, and they have no relationship to each other, are living together. That's like, okay, so what? This is not the biggest issue we have. There are much bigger issues that we're dealing with. So the point I'm trying to make here is that since celebrities are the culmination of these ideologies that are morally void, you find that their persona and their image instruct other people to be morally void as well. When you look at music today, oh my God, music today is just at a whole different level. It encourages promiscuity. It encourages lewd behavior. It encourages rebellion. It encourages anger, among other things. This is celebrity culture that our society is so influenced by. And another side effect, and this is huge, and perhaps you've noticed this, another side effect of celebrity culture is that it begins, since these individuals culminate these ideologies, and as a result, they capture and influence such large amounts of our society, you find that other sectors of our society begin to emulate the strategies and the personas of these celebrities. What do I mean by other sectors? I mean politicians, the media, and even education. Notice, especially for those who are a little bit older and have been kind of watching news over the past few decades, how has media news outlets changed over the past few decades? Now it's entertainment news. They try to entertain you. So when you look at CNN or Fox News or whatever, they're trying to entertain you. Their number one goal is to entertain the viewer. Why? Because that's how they keep the viewer engaged. That's how they keep the viewer on their channel to make more money. So it's no longer about journalism that seeks to bring out the truth, journalism that seeks to hold power accountable, that seeks to point out the problems of society and seek solutions. Media is no longer about finding the true experts who can help society navigate their difficulties, to construct solutions and to implement them. It's about entertaining you. Politicians, look at politicians today. I mean, Trump is just one example of that. It's about entertaining you. They want to entertain you. So in these rallies, they're entertaining you, this and that. They make jokes and very immature jokes. Like one Republican candidate for the Senate or the Congress, I don't know, started making fun of the vice president's and the incoming vice president's name. Kamala, and everyone's laughing. I mean, what is that? It's celebrity culture. They are trying to win votes by entertaining people. And that's very distressful, by the way, when politicians are entertainers instead of politicians. When lawmakers care more about entertaining you than about building and authoring effective law to keep the society strong and the society progressing forward. And equally distressing is that our educational institutions, I'm talking about universities, have also been influenced by celebrity culture. Notice when your child was applying for colleges and you're kind of helping them with this process, or when your child applies for colleges, notice what the colleges advertise. They're not advertising the quality of their education. They're not saying we have these educators who have won these awards and have done this research and that research. They're not saying that your student will succeed in life because we will build them education intellectually. We will build them. We will build their personality. That's not what they're saying. What they're saying is, look at how you can entertain yourself and have fun here in this college. When youth, high school students look into colleges, one of the first questions they ask is this a party school? Some schools, some universities have this reputation of being a party university. And this is what the institutions build off of. So when they try and attract your child, or when they try and attract you, look at the images they're showing you. People playing in the park, sports in the park. How awesome their dormitories are. How up to date their cafeteria is. What about the classrooms? What about the quality of the education? What about those things? It's become secondary. Why? Because of celebrity culture. This is a huge problem. But the Quran, of course, has a solution. And it's a very simple solution, but it takes a long time to actually get into full motion. And that is, what does the Quran value? See, the Prophet ﷺ was asked by the companions, who is the most gracious of people? So the Prophet ﷺ answered, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The most gracious among you are those who embody the most piety. And then the companion said, no, Rasulullah, this isn't what we were asking you. So then the Prophet ﷺ said, then Yusuf, the Prophet Yusuf ﷺ, who is a prophet, son of a prophet, grandson of a prophet, great-grandson of the beloved of Allah, Khalilullah, meaning Ibrahim ﷺ. Again, the Prophet ﷺ is pointing to Yusuf ﷺ as being the most gracious individual. Why? Because of that status of prophethood he comes from. So Yusuf is a prophet ﷺ, and the reason he was chosen to be a prophet was because of his character, because of his honesty, his sincerity, his trustworthiness, his truthfulness. And he built off of his father. He learned from his father Yaqub, who learned from his father Ishaq, who learned from his father Ibrahim alayhimus salatu wassalam. So this is a gracious person. And then they said, Ya Rasulullah, no, that's not what we're asking. So then he said, An ma'adin al-Arab. You're asking about the sources of the Arabs. Right? What does this mean? Meaning, what's inside the Arab people. You see, some tribes in Arabia were known for this characteristic or that characteristic. So the Prophet ﷺ said, oh, you're asking about these inherent characteristics we find in tribes or individuals within the Arab society. And then the Prophet ﷺ says that the best among you before Islam are the best among you in Islam if they understand Islam. إِذَا فَقِهُ, if they understand Islam. What is the Prophet ﷺ saying? He's saying that those among you who are generous, who are honest, who are trustworthy, who are gracious, who are forbearing, who are patient, who are kind, who are compassionate, among the other virtuous characteristics in Islam, those who had these characteristics before becoming Muslim, when they become Muslim, they will carry these characteristics over and they will become the best of Muslims if they also include in that understanding of Islam. Because simply embodying these characteristics does not necessarily give the individual a wise or a capable, effective ability to implement these characteristics. So look at the Prophet ﷺ, how he's teaching us to understand ourselves and understand society. Our social hierarchy needs to be built off of this. What do we value most? Well, what did the Prophet ﷺ say first? At-taqwa, piety. Why? Because inna akramakum inda Allahi atqakum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says himself, the most gracious among you are the most pious among you. And therefore, as I said in the beginning, we shouldn't be working towards destroying social hierarchies or trying to build a society that does not have social hierarchies. That is simply unnatural. Why? Because we will always put individuals who embody and culminate our values, we will always see them as revered individuals who are followed and influenced and influence other people. But who should those people be? They should be the most pious. So notice, my dear brothers and sisters, who is the most famous person in Islam? The Prophet ﷺ, the prophets ﷺ, the companions radiallahu ta'ala anhum, the four imams of fiqh, Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Shafi'i, Ahmad radiallahu ta'ala anhum, Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawood, At-Tirmidhi, An-Nasa'i, and Ibn Majah, Ibn Taymiyyah, Imam al-Ghazali, among other people. Why? Because they had taqwa. And it is important to revere these individuals because they will influence us. Of course, they're going to influence us. But how? With their taqwa. SubhanAllah, not with their immorality. Because they weren't immoral people. Celebrities influence us. Scholars influence us. But celebrities influence us negatively, while scholars influence us with taqwa and piety. So this is what we need to do. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq to be people who are able to change the ideologies by which we construct ourselves and by which our societies are constructed. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to recognize individuals who are worthy of being emulated. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make them the leaders of our communities and our societies. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.